everyone, Lu here. If you're new here, I'm explaining the Evillious Chronicles song series by Vocaloid producer Mothy P. Today we're tackling the next part of the story. Okay, so as a quick disclaimer, one is that I can't read the entire book because unfortunately I'm pressed for time with YouTube's grueling schedule, but I have read as much as I possibly can. Two is that this is meant to be digestible for newbies and normies because this series is genuinely very hard to follow and goes on a lot of incoherent tangents that don't really get answered until like 20-something songs later, or are not important in the grand scheme of things and is simply a side story meant to pad out the light novel or manga in question. So with that out of the way, let's do a quick recap. Following the battle with Eve Moonlit, Irina Clockworker, Iluka Clockworker, Levia, and Behimo Barisol, Eve, Irina, and Iluka's souls all fuse together in the body of Lucana Octo, where she has amnesia for her main personality as Iluka, so she's currently possessed by Irina, mainly? I think. It's unclear, but it kind of feels like Irina and Eve, if I'm being honest. Behimo was also kicked out and thrown into the afterlife, so no boys allowed, I guess? Roughly about 200 years after the events of The Princess Who Brought Sleep, a woman named Kagura Octo of the Octo family, yes, the one that has Venomania's bloodline, due to the Venomania incident hundreds of years ago at this point, was appointed as the holder of the Scissors of Envy, which held the soul of Rahab Barisol. To circle back to the beginning for a minute, Rahab is the mother of Levia Barisol and only looks like a fish thing as her true demon form because she was once a normal woman. I know that threw me off too for a second. Which I did mention was a single pair of scissors, and at one point it seems like they were, but they're now Western and Eastern scissors bound together. At least, I think they were a single pair at one point because Hansel and Gretel's story only depicts the Western version of the scissors, but I could be wrong and miss something. This story is hard enough to make digestible for people to understand, you know? Okay, so at some point Kagura's soul was swapped with the Demon of Envy and was trapped in the scissors, and Rahab Barisol in the body of Kagura married a man named Nagare Sudo in the town of Enbizaka, which is located on a mountain south of the kingdom of Jakoku. Which fake Kagura ended up having a daughter with Nagare named Kaio Sudo, which yes, that's kind of horrifying to have a demon possess your body to then make a child with some guy you don't even know, which I'm not entirely sure if this makes Kaio half demon or something at this point, since Monika is the only other Seven Deadly Sins character we know to have a child while possessed, and we never found out what happened to her son after the events, so... Later on, Kaio grew into a beautiful woman because she's portrayed by Luca Megurine, but with dark hair, and married a man named Gakusha Octo. Which, yes, is her cousin. This isn't the first time this is going to be brought up in the series, and to be fair, he didn't know they were cousins because of how massive the Octo family is. And I believe this is based off Edo period Japan, which is unfortunately normal across the world at this time. Gakusha in particular was a bit of a shock for Kaio to marry for Kagura, both the fake and real one, because he was a party playboy, because I guess that horny Venomania blood still pops up every few generations. Yet he did a full 180 with Kaio because he fell madly in love with her. I guess Rahab Barisol was pissed off to see true love win, because in her life she definitely had some underlying commitment issues, so she turned herself into a mermaid and threw herself off a cliff, which yes, is fucking dramatic. However, she didn't take the scissors with her, so Kaio received them, so it's kind of bittersweet to have the soul of her mom watching over her through the scissors. Gakusha and Kaio would eventually have a son named Ren together, and everything seemed to be all happy and going pretty good, except this is a Vocaloid song series made by Mothy, so shit hit the fan pretty quick. Or, I guess hit the flames? Because her husband and son were killed in a massive fire that swept the town. Or at least, that's what we're told on the outside. One would think this is Mother Nature being cruel and unforgiving, but the reality was that this fire was actually started by Kai Miroku and an anti-foreigner group. Most likely to mirror Japan's own history at this time, Jakuku opened up to trade with other countries where a xenophobic group formed, as was the case in real life, to be honest, if you know Japan's stance on foreigners, where Kai Miroku worked with this group to try and light the Freeze's Foundation's trading house on fire, where Gakusha had spotted him. Because of a witness, Kai decided to light a bush on fire instead, which set the whole town ablaze because this is a very foresty village, and if you live in California or watched Bambi, then you know how quickly fire spreads around a bunch of trees. Meanwhile, Gakusha was pursuing Kai to bring him to the authorities and seemed to activate what seems to be vaguely described resembling the winged demon form both Sadarasis Venomania and Kyle Marlon took when possessed by the demon of lust. I could be wrong though, and it's possible that because of Venomania's bloodline, lust magic is still lingering in the Octo family. Which would explain why this family is fucking massive and hasn't died out like all the other noble families in this series. So the massive fire and forcing his body to use powers he wasn't built for nearly killed him and remained lost in the deeper parts of the forest while Kyle was trying to flee to safety with their son. A burning house collapsed onto Kyle and her son, where her son died despite Kyle trying so hard to protect him, while Gakusha's body was never found and was presumed dead, and that his body simply burned to ash. Except Gakusha did survive because he had severe memory loss and was found by a monastery where he became a Buddhist monk, going under the name Gakusha, where we'll circle back to him later on the table. I should mention that his original name was Gakuga, but having to switch between Gakuga and Gakusha got really confusing, so let's just call him Gakusha to make it easy. During all this, Behemoth Barisol traveled to all layers of the afterlife because, if you remember, he was separated from Levia at this point. Side note, Gumilia is still master of the Hellish Yard, with Seth Twilight as her mask. So, Behemoth meets with Alan, where currently the song Rebirthday is taking place as Alan's punishment is being trapped in a black box with red and blue chains for complicity in Rillian's rampage and even letting himself get ahead for her. At least I believe this is where Rebirthday is taking place. I could be wrong and it's much later, but I feel very confident it's right here in this story. He basically gets a lore recap for Alan at this point, as I think Behemoth is trapped in the box too by accident, where Behemoth bribes Alan out by promising that Rillian is going to reincarnate in Jakoku, so Alan helps them both leave because Alan wants to see Rillian again. Sickle, the little bat mascot I mentioned last time, who is often our plot catch-up device at this point, also joins. So basically, Sickle and Behemoth know Alan is going to fail to find Rillian because omnipresent god stuff. So Behemoth is going to pretend to be a maid named Bufuko Tsukimoto and nursing Kyle Sudo back to health. Because while Kyle survived, it was just barely because she was very badly burned and it took many years for her to recover. Which is weird to me that Kyle's original body, and I'll explain why original in a second, isn't depicted with severe burn marks like her husband, but I just presume it was an oversight. Or maybe it has something to do with being half demon, or the scissors, we'll see. During this time, Kyle was constantly interrogated by the Octo family on where the scissors went because, you know, that's an object of sin, and we've seen what happens when these objects fall into the wrong hands, like, 4 times now? Yet Kyle feigns ignorance despite having them the whole time. After she recovers, the Octo family kicks her out, so she returns to Enbizaka and meets Miku Miroku, Kai Miroku's daughter. Turns out that much of Enbizaka had been rebuilt following the fire thanks to the Freeze's Foundation in collaboration with Paris Cutie Marlon, including the tailor shop that Kyle's mother and later herself owned. Running some errands, Kyle meets with Iluka Clockworker, or rather Ma as she's called at this point because she is very different from the Iluka we previously knew, where he explains that Ma is very skilled in healing minds, which he believes will help heal the grief Kyle must be going through from the loss of her son and husband. Kyle and Ma have actually become pretty good friends at this point from this conversation, but Ma took it a step further by hypnotizing her once everyone was gone to meet her in private again at the rebuilt tailor shop. Also, it's implied Peri Marlon might be biologically related to the Freeze's family somehow. I pray that this doesn't mean Kyle and Yukina had a raising my wife thing going on, and it's just a rumor because the Marlon family still works with the Freeze's Foundation because of the wholesome close connection Kyle and Yukina had. Please, for the love of all that's good in this world, let it be that. At the Miroku shop, which is a business Kai Miroku's family owns, where his daughter Rin manages it. This is basically a side plot, but Rin Miroku is a reincarnation of Rillian, whose soul is still waiting for Alan. And if you remember, Alan was reincarnated now and is looking for Rillian. It was while chatting with Rin, though, that Kyle is finally developing the trait of envy, as she's become envious over seeing how happy the Miroku family is, while she has to grieve her own son and husband with these burn scars that ruin the beauty she once had. It's actually to a point where murderous thoughts cross her mind about, killing the whole family just so this family can feel what it's like to feel the pain she does. But she quickly dismisses it but grows concerned. Just wait until she finds out Kai Miroku caused all this. Oh boy. So Ma and Kyle meet up later in the tailor shop where she explains the entire Octo family to Kyle, which I guess means explaining the Venomania incident, and that she's currently in the body of her ancestor Lucana Octo. Because if you remember, that entire shit show of a showdown with Irina and Leluka caused their souls to fuse and wake up in the body of a revived Lucana Octo. So Ma explains that she feels kind of weird about having a body that belongs to another family. So I guess she was gonna kind of like swap bodies with someone in the Octo family just because? Where she offers to trade bodies with Kyle. Kyle is kind of weirded out like this because swapping to be in the body of your ancestor is a little weird, but Ma persuades her by telling her that this would be a total clean slate for her, and she didn't have to be the Kaio Sudo who lost her husband and son anymore, and see those reminders every day in the mirror, where she tearfully says she's been envious of other people's happy families. Ma also tells her that she believes she might be possessed by a demon of envy, solely because Ma does not know that Kaio is actually half demon at this point. So they basically pull a witch's house and Ma and Kaio swap bodies. Just to make sure no one is weirded out that Kaio looks like Luca Megurine now, she used her magic to hypnotize the entire town into thinking Kaio always looked like Luca Megurine, and since Ma is kinda stupid powerful now, this works pretty well. So Kaio starts to live her fresh start where she spots Kai Miroku on the same bridge she last saw her husband on when Enbizaka was on fire. Because swapping bodies doesn't fix grief and PTSD, Kaio starts believing Kai Miroku is Gakusha solely because of the burn scars on his arm, because again she doesn't know Kai started the fire. Yeah, so Kaio might be physically fine now, but she starts to spiral and starts talking to everyone like Akusha and her son are still alive, which everyone is kind of concerned, but they don't think too much of it. So something we don't hear a lot at this point is that the Octo family can have visions of the future, and this is how Iluka knew when it was time to fucking bounce during the Daughter of Evil part of the story. We'll see this used a lot more later though as we dive more into the Octo family. But Kaio has a prophetic dream where the entire song of Tailor Shop of Enbizaka plays out, where at the end she asks Kai Miroku if he's really her husband in that dream. In that dream, Kai Miroku confesses he started the fire that killed her entire family, where, she kills him too, and at the trial she exposes he was actually part of a super xenophobic group, and a war actually broke out so bad that it destroyed the entire town and its surrounding areas. So she continues to have these dreams. She knows these are visions of a possible future, so she decides she's gonna kill the Miroku family as revenge because fuck Kai Miroku. But she's gonna pretend to be completely delusional and insane so a war doesn't break out and destroy the whole area. This is where the actual song of Tailor Shop of Enbizaka starts, which is the story that Kai Sudo is telling everyone else, because remember, she is pretending to be delusional at this point. Although she is still murderously jealous, but she knew Kai wasn't her husband or anything, so this is just the motive she's going to give herself in court, that she was just insane. which I'm not sure how I feel about it, because I kind of prefer the idea of Kaio being possessed by pure jealousy, but that's just me. So Kaio opens herself up to the Miroku family by making a red kimono for Mei Miroku, Kai's wife, where her anger is the real reason she's crying on the kimono as described in the song. Her first victim was Miku Miroku, who had an argument with Kai that night because she was pregnant with her boyfriend's baby out of wedlock. So she was out by herself to avoid going home a little longer and continuing arguing with her dad. Kaio uses this opportunity to lure Miroku out and then kill her, taking her emerald green obi for herself as part of a master plan. Sometime later at this point, Alan's reincarnation, Kokutan Doji, comes into Kaio's shop and confesses a mermaid, which remember is Raham Barasol at this point, told him that she was his mother. Being kind of off her rocker at this point, Kaio believes Kokutan is her son, so this makes her happy, but still on the murder plan. Though she thinks it's weird how good he is at sewing and knows what a brioche is, which, if you remember, was one of Rillian's favorite snacks at tea time that Alan made. After a mourning period for the Miroku family, I guess, Kaio spots Kai buying Rin a beautiful yellow hairpin, so Kaio pretty much clocks in that she knows her next victim has to be Rin. So she met with Rin on the beach, where Rin basically confesses she had a prophetic dream where Kaio was gonna kill her, but she remembers her past life now thanks to the Demon of Pride, and she doesn't want to die yet unless she meets with Alan, who remember is currently Kokutan. Yeah, so that was a losing battle for Rin, where Kaio killed her despite fighting back, and took her hairpin as a surprise tool that she will use for later. Months later, Kai was going to be away from home for a while, so this was Kaio's opportunity to kill his wife. Even better, she finished the kimono Mei had ordered a while ago, where she brutally murdered her and took her kimono for her grand revenge. Which, by the way, it's been stated that Kaio killed all of them with scissors, which I thought was the Scissors of Envy, which, remember, has the spirit of her mom inside of her, so that is some wild mother-daughter bonding right there. So Kaio pulls off the craziest slay ever by wearing Mei's red kimono, Miku's green obi, and Rin's yellow hairpin as she walked up to Kai as he was coming home from his trip to the mountain. Yeah, so the man is reasonably freaked out, and then Kaio also reveals that she knows he started the fire and is super racist, so like, all's well that ends well, so she brutally kills Kai, which, like, it's described that she really brutally killed him, like, cutting him to pieces levels of brutal. Which, again, dude was hella evil and caused a fire that killed a few people and a baby, so his murder? Justified. Murdering an innocent mother and her two daughters, especially poor Rin and Miku, because, man, one was pregnant and the other one was waiting for her reincarnated brother. Like, that's just fucked up. Like, I have sympathy for Kaio, because Kai is fucking awful, but, you know, that part isn't cool. Also, Kai is a hypocrite for being xenophobic as hell, but then made the exception for his wife who was mixed race. And yes, Kai's mother was killed by foreigners, so that's largely the reason for his resentment, but dude, no. Just no. Yeah, so she was quickly caught and arrested for his murder and confessed to it by claiming to the court that Kai was her husband and that she thought he was cheating on her with multiple women. So yeah, she was deemed insane, and given the time period this was based on, she was sentenced to execution by beheading. So because of her demon lineage and Ma's magic, Kaio couldn't be killed the normal way, so her executioner had to use the Key of Envy to kill her. Mind you, Kokutan was her executioner, which you may be asking how it can be used to kill someone, but the Key of Wrath can often transform into something of a sword, which is how Satyr racist Phenomania was killed, along with apparently the knife Clarith almost used to kill Rillian. I know I should have mentioned it before, but you know, sometimes this stuff feels like a rambling of a lunatic, and I'm really trying to make this all digestible. So Kaio was finally dead when Gakuga, now going as a Buddhist monk Gakusha if you remember, was with Kokutan to pray and bury Kaio's head and body. This is where the song The Weathered Head at Onigashima takes place, which I hadn't heard of prior to this video. It's actually really cool in that it's a few keys off from Shop of Enbizaka, which makes sense given that Gakusha's perspective and he's her husband. Kokutan tells Gakusha that Kaio was like a mother to him, and that he's overall sad he couldn't help her with her sanity. As Gakusha prays Buddhist mantras, his memories come back as Gakuga, and tells Kokutan everything about his past and how he has to find his wife. Although Gakusha wasn't able to accept or understand that Kaio is dead, and he wasn't affected by the body swap spell thingy Ma used, because I believe he was too far away for the spell to take effect. So he heads back to Enbizaka and spends the rest of his life looking for Kaio. During all this, Ma was looking for the Scissors of Envy with Kokutan in between, where she finally found them but learned the truth about everything we've learned in this video, and forced Rahab back into the Scissors and freed Kagura's soul. Though Kagura had to go to the Heavenly Yard instead because her body was sucked in with the Scissors with Rahab, where Rahab confessed that she purposefully threw Kokutan off from finding Rin because she's a bitch, I guess. That or knew Rin and Kokutan's souls were irregulars who could reshape the world with Rebirthday song or whatever, but we're not there yet in elaborating the Rebirthday song. This is where Ma reunited with Behemo, I guess. Good for Levi and Behemo, I guess. Though after this, Ma traveled around for a bit and found an apocalypse was coming, so she was going to work to become a pure being by absorbing all the demons of sin, so she did this first by absorbing Rahab, which definitely isn't good. Now she's looking for the other 6 sin objects to absorb the demons from that are trapped inside. This can only go horribly, horribly bad. About 100 years will pass after the events of the Tailor Shop of Enbizaka, where we learn the Frieza's foundation has now become corrupted and seek to understand Ma's immortality, where Ma will meet a man named Gandalf Marlin, and oh boy does that start one hell of a roller coaster ride after this. Buckle up for the next time, guys, because in the next video, we'll be tackling Judgment of Corruption. And guys, when I tell you this is where shit hits the fan, this is where shit definitely hits the fan. What did you guys think of Story of Envy? Was there anything I missed? I know I didn't elaborate enough on the Heavily and Hellish Yard stuff, but like I said, a lot more is elaborated and explored much later, so I'm saving it for then. As always, let me know down below. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you're new. And if any old or new subs would like to help support my channel in any possible way, my Ko-fi page is down below in the description, along with links to all of my social media tabs. For any subscribers, new or old, who'd like to help with video ideas, or maybe just want to talk about anime or something with some like-minded people, I have a fan server link down below. See you next time!